What is up, everybody? Svenddiesel here with Sportsman's Warehouse. We're going to be tying up a bunny leech. This is a super simple pattern. We're adding a few twists and tricks to it, but super effective and can mimic a whole bunch of different patterns for your local area. So we're going to be using this TMC A089 in a size 6. I really love this hook gap, and you can, of course, get it in different sizes. And we're using a tungsten cone head from Riverwilds Flies. You can also use a brass. Just make sure you weight it accordingly. We're going to be using some 0.025 lead wire. You may also use lead free, but definitely if you're going to size it down, you might want to step down to a 0.1015. We're using some UTC. This is a 140 Denier black, and we're going to be using a few different things on this for the body. We're going to be using some of this black barred rabbit strips in olive, and also the Crosscut. And of course, these two materials come in a bunch of different colors. One's going to be the tail and one's going to be the body. You're going to need some Z-Ment. This is by Wapsi. It comes in a brush application. And then we're also going to be adding a little bit of flash. This is Monoflash in gold, and we're going to be using about 3 to 4 of these fibers. And then of course, we've got our eye stub. This is golden brown and eye stub red. This is kind of a little trick and tip that I do for mine. It makes it a little bit more effective. In my personal opinion, this here, I think, mimics a perch because we had a really good luck with it this year for some bass. So you want to orient your tungsten cone on there, and then all we're going to do is use our lead wraps here and do about 8 to 10 wraps. This helps to hold the cone in place. So if you're using a smaller diameter of lead, it could potentially slide through the cone, but you can see this thicker 0.025 with this heavier tungsten cone. It's just going to hold it right there in place, make it a little easier to begin tying, and also orient that tungsten cone how we're going to need it, and it provides a little bit of a dive motion. So start your thread right there behind the lead wraps, and then as you're going over these lead wraps, make sure you do kind of some crisscross wraps to begin with. If you went straight up and down, it would go in between the lead, potentially spreading it out. And then I'll just build up a little bit of a taper behind there and advance my thread back to the bend. You can see this hook here. I use it for a variety of streamers. It's a really, really good hook. I love the bend on this, and it helps with lots of, I've had really good luck with hookups on it. So we're going to take this regular rabbit strip here, and this is going to be the tail. I'm going to go ahead and cut a notch here in the end to help with the taper. Give it a little bit better profile as it swims, like it look a little bit more natural. And all we're going to do is I'm going to do this roughly 2 times the length of the overall hook. So I'll go ahead and measure that once and twice. And then to make it a little easier, we're going to cut this off a little bit, give us a little bit of play room. However, if I'm tying multiple of these, I don't cut it. I just cut it when I'm done, and then you move forward with that remaining strip for the next fly. So there we go. It's roughly 2 times. I'm going to find the division point here. It's not going to be in the direct middle because of the bend of the hook. And so we're going to pull the fibers back. It helps to moisten your fingers a little bit. I'll bring it up and over with 2 or 3 loose wraps, trying to get that rabbit hide to kind of concave around that hook shank so that it's nice and straight. I'll do a couple wraps in front, and then I'll come back over and do about 2 wraps, and then in front of the rabbit hide again. It's kind of pinch wrapped in place at this point. Now you just want to check your tail. That looks pretty good. And so we are ready to tie in our body material. This is a relatively quick fly or streamer that we can tie up in a bunch of different colors. I'm going to orient the crosscut fibers so that the fibers are going to be going backwards as I palmer this. You could use a regular rabbit strip for this. It just makes it a little bit more manageable and orients the hair going backwards. If you're using a regular rabbit strip, it will kind of look like a poof ball, and it traps a little bit more air, has a little bit more profile. I really like these crosscut strips for the body on this. And this is really critical when you're tying with the hide on. You're not making a dubbing loop. I like to lay down a little bit of super glue here. That way the hide is not going to slip on you. Sometimes I've had flies where the hide and the tail slip around the bend, and it creates a miserable experience because you never know if your hook point is clear. So apply a little bit of super glue there, and then wrap this while that super glue is wet. The fibers are already oriented backwards, and so I'm just overlapping those wraps slightly so that we get a really, really nice body. And then the key here is do not crowd this cone, because we want to tuck some stuff into the cone. And so I'm going to end this with about, I could do potentially 1 or maybe 2 more wraps if I was really pushing it with this hide. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there, tie it off, and then I'll kind of just pinch wrap that off and clean that up, and then we'll go ahead and trim this out. Now, the reason for leaving that gap is it's going to make it a lot easier to finish this fly. So I'll kind of clean that up just a little bit, and now we are ready to add our crystal flash. I like to put that on first, and I'm going to orient them so that they go into the tail of this fly. I'm just going to pull out 3 or 4 fibers here, and we'll cut it. And this is also a little tip on how to store your flash. Makes it more manageable. I just put a little slit in the bottom and pull them out as needed. I'm going to divide them in half, tie it in here on the top. You can see how I suck that into the cone. And then all I do is I kind of wiggle them down at an angle, and then I'll advance my thread back over those. And then we've got them perfectly tied in on each side. I'll go ahead and pull each of them, just inspect to make sure the other side is in the right place. I'll hold them above my fly, and probably about where the bend of the hook would be, I'll go ahead and just trim those so they're a little longer than the body fibers, and that will just kind of help add that flash. And then we'll go ahead, and this is going to be a step here that maybe some of you might struggle with. I'm not perfect with this, but I definitely attempt it and try it. I'm going to pull out some of this brown olive eye stub. I'm going to stack the fibers, meaning pulling them and then placing them on top of each other so that they're oriented. I'm going to pinch them in half here, and I'm going to tie them so that they kind of fan on the bottom of this fly. And I like to get 2 wraps, so I'm going to kind of divide that where my thread went, and then we'll come up and over, and I'll just kind of move those around so that they're going on each side of the fly. I don't want them to be on the top as much as the bottom half of this shank, because the rabbit strip we tied in before for the tail is going to come up and over. And so we're going to do that same process with the red now, and I'm just going to pull it off, stack these, and you can see that this is adding kind of a target spot. I like to think that this looks like a perch, but I haven't had any fish, give reviews other than they have had some free lip piercings. So I'm going to keep this more in the center here, so the golden olive's kind of more towards the side, whereas the red is strictly underneath. And then we can see we've got a little bit of a exposed shank there, but this rabbit strip, when it comes up and over and we suck it down in, it's going to hide all that, and it's going to look perfect. So it's looking really good. Just make sure you divide that bunny hide for the body in half, and then I'll come up and over it. And I don't trim this in advance. I want to just tie that off with those hairs in place, and then I'll trim it as close as I can, kind of using that cone as a guide. Be careful not to trim, your scissors onto the cone. And then I'll just use my whip finish tool or a bodkin, and I'll just kind of shove that down in. Now, the reason I don't pre-trim it is then you lose some of those hairs that we tied in that aren't attached to the hide. I think it makes a better, more full fly. And then we'll go ahead and do a whip finish just right here in that cone. And then we will be done. So I'll do a double 3-turn whip finish. That way it's nice and secure. I'm not going to mess with any resin. If you want, you can put some head cement on there. You could also inject some UV resin into that cone. However, we super glued it. I know it's going to be awesome. So then the last step here is I'm going to brush some of those fibers out. You're going to lose a little bit when you're folding the eye stub over. It's not the most secure way for trapping every fiber, but it gets it traps them in really nice. And you can see how this is going to flow into a really nice shiny belly, a really nice profile. The gold's going to get into that tail. We're going to have plenty of action with that rabbit hide in the back. The only tip or trick I have is don't be afraid when that rabbit hide is dried out after fishing it and it's going to be kind of curled up. As soon as it gets wet, it's going to go back to its same flowy state. So all these materials are available in a bunch of different colors. You can tie them up, manipulate it. It's a fun pattern. It fishes well. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click subscribe.